what's up?
Good morning, Shashank. Now, as you probably know, here at Undisclosed Mega Gaming Corporation, we like to know who are the best reviewers on our platform. We feel that these people have a specific set of skills that would be very useful in benefiting our platform. So what I'd actually like to do is I would like to start an incentive program where we give our best reviewers early access to games and certain perks for giving such great reviews.
All right, sounds interesting. So how exactly are we defining best reviewers?
Let's use votes helpful to define it. You may have known and seen in our data that there's this concept of you can say people's votes are helpful. See if you can find that data somewhere, stored wherever it's stored, and SQL it up together, or whatever you data analysts like to do, in order to tell me exactly who the top reviewers are.
Votes helpful. Okay, I can see what we could do with that. Some issues I could potentially see with that are one-hit wonders. Potentially people who they wrote some like one review, and because of that, they ended up getting a ton of votes. So when I do my analysis, I'll be sure to try and take that into account and show that to you in the final product. Are there any thresholds that I should be aware of? Are we trying to run this promotion for like the top 1,000 reviewers or something?
1,000 sounds about right. What I really want is to understand this population a bit better so that we can pick the top reviewers using a more data-driven approach.
Okay, so I'm thinking I'll put together a small review of potential ways we can measure the concept of a top reviewer and then give you an interactive dashboard that will allow you to get a better idea of what that population looks like.
Sounds good. I will need this by the end of the day today.
Tight deadlines, I love it. I'll get right on it.
Bye-bye. Okay, so now I know what the stakeholder needs, but I don't know where to get the data. Let me go contact another analyst who I think might actually know where this data lies. Okay, let's get started. Now that we know where the data lives in the database, let's go ahead and use SQL to explore it. That way we can bring it into our computer using Python, and from there we can go ahead and create a quick report by the end of the day. Okay, so he said review import is where we should look, right? So let's do a quick select star. So select star. We're querying the database right now. So select star from, the table is called review import, and then we always want to limit our data. That way we're not trying to pull in all the data all at once. Okay, cool. It looks like this is review data. So this is stored in the database, and we'll pull it out into a CSV or something. That way we can use it in Python. Cool, yeah, so this is all information on the review. And it looks like that review ID is the one that they were talking about. All right, so just hit command /. Let's go ahead and try author import. Like they said, they had a list of tables for us to check out. Cool, looks like this is the author's information. This is probably where we'll get a lot of great information about the authors that we can use to our benefit for our stakeholder to help them understand which of these authors are the ones we might want to give that promotion to. Cool. Now let's try looking at another table. There was something called game import. I don't know how useful this will be for our analysis right now, but maybe when we go deeper down, it'll be interesting because at the end of the day, the thing is we only have so much time today because we have to get this in by the end of the day. So we can't analyze everything that we want to. And that's something that's really important whenever you're trying to create something for a stakeholder, is understanding what the timeline is. That way you're not taking too long getting them what they need. Speed is very, very important in the corporate world as well. Okay, cool. I'm guessing we won't use this either, but let's go ahead and create a very large data set with all of this data in it. That way we don't have to come back into the SQL database and we can just stick to Python. So we need to query all of our data. So I'm going to start off with this review import. Select star means that we're selecting all of our variables. Sorry, all of our columns. So select star from review import, and then let's go ahead and join, and then we'll join purchase import on, let's say, we'll call this, we'll alias this table out as A, we'll alias this as B, and then review ID was the name of the column that we want to join on. So joining just means we're going to link them together horizontally, the table, so that we can tie the information together, and we're going to tie it together based on this review ID. B dot review ID. Let's see what we get. Looks good, looks good. We're still limiting it to 10. That's fine though. So you might notice over here, we have a review ID over here, and we have a review ID over here. One way you can avoid duplicating the keys whenever you join stuff together is by using the keyword using. So you can type in something, you can actually type in using review ID, and then you'll see there's only one review ID now. There won't be a second one over here. So that's a cool little trick I found out, especially if your columns are named the exact same thing. Then you can use the using keyword in order to join two tables without duplicating columns. So we'll do the same thing over here. So we have our game information as well. So if I go to the end, I should see the game name and stuff. Yep, looks like we have the game name over here, lots of Elder Scrolls. And then finally, let's do one last one. Okay, looks good. We have our author data. Now we have our large table with all the information we need inside it. Finally, let's go ahead and remove this limit 10. That way we can do a full join. Awesome, awesome. So it looks like we have 1 million rows of data. So that's not an insane amount of data, but definitely more than would be easy to process in Excel. So good thing we're using Python. And the good thing is because we're using Python and SQL, our solution is very scalable. So if more review data gets added into the database, it should be able to handle it, or we can make minor changes such as switching from pandas to Dask or other big data solutions. And I'll have a video out in the future that helps you understand that as well. So cool. We have all of our data over here. One thing that I will need to do is I noticed that the Steam ID, which is basically the author's username, is one, it has this dot over here, which is going to be a little bit difficult to deal with in Python. So we can clean that up right now. Also, it's stored as an int64. If we do any aggregations on an integer, that's not recommended. It's not recommended you aggregate or like cluster your data based on a integer, because databases act kind of weird when you do that kind of stuff, and they can misaggregate stuff. So you want to change it to a string. That way that doesn't happen. Now, what we have over here is, the reason this is important is because if we're studying users, this is our user ID, author.steam ID, and so we need to make sure that this is a string. So let's go ahead and actually spell out the columns we'll be bringing in. So I'm going to do a.review ID, and then we'll do, let's see, I think everything else is unique for the table. Language, review, timestamp, created. I think this says timestamp updated. Let's just copy the name to the clipboard. Recommended. Votes helpful. So this is going to be very important because this is what the stakeholder wants us to use to determine
if the review was helpful or not, and which authors are the most helpful in their with their reviews. Votes funny. That might be fun to work with later. Weighted vote score. I might have to go ask that subject matter expert what that actually means, because I'm not sure what that means. Comment count. Whoops. Sorry, Steam purchase. Let's bring this in too. I usually like to do this instead of doing select star statements for the final export. That way I can specify data types and stuff before I finally export my data. App ID. In fact, I think I'll just keep app name because I won't be able to do anything with app ID anyways. Okay, author Steam ID. So this, because of the dot, I'm gonna have to surround it in double quotes. That way the SQL database doesn't get confused as to what the dot's for. And then I want to cast this or change it, its data type, because right now it's an integer, which is a number. I actually want it to be a varchar. And let's go with 20. And I'm only saying 20 because I know how long the longest one is. It's 17 characters long. And then we'll just call it Steam ID. And we'll write it in the Python way. And then let's get author num games up here. And then same thing, we want to do this, and just to make it easier for us, let's rename it as num games owned. And then here's author num reviews as num reviews. It looks like this auto completion is working quite well. Author playtime as playtime forever. We'll do author playtime last 2 weeks as playtime last 2 weeks. Let's see what else we're missing. And I think we just have 2 more columns. We'll do playtime at review as playtime at review. There we go. And then finally, let's do author last played as last played. And I think the same query should run. Let's see if we get any errors. Pulling the data from the SQL database. Cool. And good, it looks like the username comes out as an object and everything else came out with the new column names I gave them. Awesome, 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 awesome. Cool, so now we have our data and I've outputted it to a data frame stored inside the variable df1. Let's go ahead and just see what our data types are in Python. So we pulled it from a SQL database. Let's go ahead and see what data types we're looking at. So you always want to do this initial exploration over here. .d types, whoops, in order to just get an idea of like, what are you looking at? What do we have? So it looks like we have a bunch of, okay, there are no dates in here. I guess there's timestamp created and timestamp updated, which we might play around with later, but I think for the purposes of our initial exploration for our stakeholder, because we need to get something out by the end of the day, let's not worry about any time series analysis. So we don't need to convert these to date times. Instead, we can leave them as integers. So when it says timestamp created, what it probably is, it's what you call a Unix timestamp. So if I scroll over, whoops, and we look at timestamp created, you'll see, yeah, this is a Unix timestamp. This is the seconds or milliseconds after January 1st, 1970, also called the Unix epoch. And it is just a numerical way to store dates that basically all computers use. Okay, it looks like we have some interesting data over here.
So let's do this. Let's see if we can try and figure out which authors, which user names have the most votes helpful, since the stakeholder was interested in this variable at first, right? So we'll do a quick group by just to get a basic idea of what our data looks like and what our distribution of users looks like. So we'll do something along the lines of df_1. We're going to do a group by. So we'll group by. And then let's do Steam ID. How did I store it? I stored Steam_ID. And then let's take votes helpful and then sum that. And then I'll hit Shift Enter and see what we get. So we're grouping together all the data and aggregating it. Okay, so I want to see this in descending order because all these ones and zeros aren't too helpful. So let's go ahead and reset the index, which will base this. What this is a series. A series is basically a data frame with only one column. And you'll see over here, this is the index over here. By resetting the index, we'll take the index and make it a column. There we go. And then now, and the cool thing about pandas is you can always just string together one command after another. We can sort values by votes helpful, and then we want to do it in descending order. So we'll do ascending equals false. Awesome, 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 awesome. So this person over here is the reviewer with the highest number of votes, people voting that their review is helpful. So let's go ahead and just take a look at what that reviewer looks like. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to pull up df1, and then I'm going to go to the username. And I think I can just filter it by doing this. There we go. Filter, enter. And it looks like they review Nier Automata. I've heard of the game, I've never played it myself, but I have heard of it. So this person owns 247 games, sweet. Quite a few games. Playtime forever. Okay, so I'm guessing that has to be hours. That's interesting though. I would imagine 437 hours played is not that much for some of that many games. So I do wonder what this number means up here. I would imagine someone with that many, I don't play that many games, and I play more than 437 hours of games. Not on Steam, but on other systems and stuff. So I find that interesting that someone's only played 437 hours. So it looks like the person wrote it in simplified Chinese. So we have a multilingual data set over here. The stakeholder said nothing about specifically only looking at certain parts of the world. So that is a question that we'll have to leave on the side to see if they want it answered. Or what I'll do is in my dashboard that I'm going to create for them, I'll leave them the ability to filter out certain languages, because I can understand maybe, for example, you can't run a promotion in all parts of the world all at once. Awesome. Okay, so we have an idea of what our best review looks like. I'm curious. Oh, but you know what I just realized? There's only one row of data for this person. That means that this person wrote one review, and that review garnered this much attention. So this is what I mentioned to the stakeholder earlier when I was talking about one-hit wonders and how common those might be. So this is something that we need to take into account. I don't think that they would want to look at a one-hit wonder. I can't imagine that that would be a particularly interesting thing to look at. So let's see if we can do something about one-hit wonders and reduce the number of those that exist. So what we'll do is we will go ahead and create a new data frame, and we'll call it the one-hit wonder data frame. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to group by the username while at the same time, so we'll do the same thing we did up here actually. So I can actually just copy this code. But also count the number of review IDs, that way we can see how many reviews each person did. So So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to do or I'll do it like this, yeah. Let me do it like this. Top voted reviews. So we'll create a data frame that's called top voted reviews. And then we'll have a data frame called most reviews. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and count the number of reviews per user. Review ID. And then I should be able to there we go. So it looks like the person who's reviewed the most games has only reviewed about 22 games. So, and I'm guessing that the drop off comes fairly quickly. Then it goes to 10, 9 fairly quickly. Out of 91,000, we're only on page, we're only on page 13 of 91,000. Okay. So what happens is I want to join these two tables, and we'll call it the one hit wonder table. So we'll call OHW equals PD, so pandas, dot merge. And then the left table will equal top voted reviews. The right table will equal most reviews. And then we'll do this on equals Steam ID. That's the column we'll be joining on. And then how we're going to be doing an inner join, meaning that we're going to look for only intersections between the two tables, although they should have intersections for every single thing we're looking for. Cool. So we can see that that person over there with that 26,000 voted review does only have a single review. And it looks like a lot of people in the top only have like one review. There was only one person I saw over here. They had 4. So, and they seem to be the anomaly. 4, 3. So I'm guessing the stakeholder is not going to be interested in providing an incentive to someone who wrote only one review. Maybe they would be, but I feel like that is not necessarily behavior that we want to encourage because it's not replicable. We want to see someone who's written a few reviews that have passed a certain threshold. So I'm going to create an interactive dashboard that allows them to look at only those people. Because anyways, we only want to look at like maybe the top 1,000 reviewers. But what this is telling us, right, what this analysis has told us is unlike what the stakeholder was saying, purely looking at votes helpful is not a good way of telling who the top reviewers are. We need to look at other metrics as well, such as the number of review IDs done. And this is what a data analyst does. A data analyst is usually there to either confirm and prove using data certain suspicions that stakeholders have, or in this case to say, hey, maybe there's another way we could look at it, and that's kind of what my job is. My job is to provide suggestions as to what are other ways that we could look at this data. So let's go ahead and create what we call a Pareto plot. So a Pareto plot is a plot that shows you on one axis, so it's a dual y-axis chart, and on one axis it'll show you the total size of, on one axis it'll show you like the, in sorted order, the number of a certain item in a table, and on the other axis it'll show you what percentage, what cumulative percentage that each item is on that table. Python and pandas offer no easy way to create Pareto tables, so I have code that I copied from the internet that I just use wherever I go. And the reason that I love Pareto charts is actually I have a green belt, so it's a Lean Six Sigma. I have a Six Sigma green belt, and in that training, Pareto charts are used all the time. And it's basically a way of proving out the 80-20 rule, where basically 80% of a phenomena can be explained by 20% of the inputs.
And if you can measure all kinds of natural phenomena, and you'll notice that that's like true a lot of the times. Even in your own life, you may notice that 80% of the benefit you receive from a lot of things comes from maybe just 20% of the effort, and the other 80% of the effort is to get that other 20% of the benefit. So it's kind of like they say, you're right. Even the best employees, it's not the 20% of work that everyone does. It's the 80% of extra work that the best employees are doing that gets them that 20% improvement on everyone else that makes them the best employees. So looks like we have this. Let's go ahead and make a quick histogram of review ID. That way we can prove out what we're showing over here of like, hey, I don't think that looking at votes helpful by itself is necessarily the best idea. I want to also look at review ID count. Basically, how many reviews did the person write? So we're going to import plotly.express as px. Plotly is a graphing tool and something I personally like a lot better than matplotlib. You can usually just plot stuff way faster in Plotly. It's way easier to use. And the graphs are interactive. So you put in your data frame over there, and then on the x-axis we want to plot review ID. Let's plot it and see what we get. Yep. So review ID won 843,000 records out of our 1 million records are in just with one count. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit easier to use. So there is a template I like to use called Simply White. Maybe it doesn't work over here. Well, let's see if we can look up Plotly histogram templates. The only problem is Plotly can also be a little bit weird to deal with sometimes. Let us try ggplot2. So ggplot2 is an R template, and it's usually cleaner than whatever shows up in Python. Okay, so I guess just some templates don't work in some graph types. I wonder what happens if I type in presentation. Never tried that one before. Oh, okay, it bolds everything, makes it easier to read. Okay, cool. I kind of want an outline on each one, but we don't have to worry about that for now. So let's go ahead and title this graph. We're going to title it histogram reviews per reviewer. There we go. That way when they look at it, they'll know what the stakeholder will look at it, and they'll know what they're looking at. There we go, histogram reviews per reviewer. And now I want to go ahead and create that Pareto chart just to prove my point out and say, hey, it looks like the vast majority of our data is coming from just a couple of people. And I'm just going to copy some code I already have for it. And then along with, whenever I copy code from the internet, I always like to put in the URL I got it from as well. That way it's easy to reference in the future. One, to give credit for the people who are just giving away this code for free. But two, also, if there is an error, it's easy to trace where it might have come from. So we're just going to copy and paste this over here. I got this from statology.org. And it's a practice I would like to make standardized in any team that I work with. If you get something from the internet, just cite it. One, just to give the people who created it credit. But possibly, more importantly, honestly, is also just to make sure that it's traceable if we ever see any problems with it. So I think the only thing I'll have to change is these over here. I'll have to change it to this data frame over here. I think that is almost it. I just have one more thing I have to do. I have to create a column called cumulative percentage.
And we're going to do it like this. So again, this is one of those things where you just get the code from the internet. And you know, as long as you know what it does, that's all that matters. So I think the problem over here is that we actually need to do, we need to sort. So it's creating a cumulative percentage, and you'll see that it's not doing it fast enough. And I think it's because, or sorry, it's not doing it correctly. And that's because this data is not organized in the right way. So we need to reorganize it. So we use the sort values command, and we're going to sort it by review ID. And then I think it needs to be in descending order. So we'll say ascending equals false. Oh, you know what it is? This is what the problem is. What we need to actually do is we need to create a table that is the count of Steam IDs for every review ID count. So what we need to do is we need to do a dot group by review ID, and then do Steam ID dot count. That's what we're looking for. And then we're gonna do a dot reset index on that. And I think that's what we're looking for. Just to test it out, yep, we have a skipped index over here. So basically what this is saying that for one review, there are 843,000 users that have only done one review. And what this is also saying is that there are no users who only did 21 reviews. They either did 20 or 22, and that makes sense. With only like one user for each of these things, I would expect some numbers to be skipped. And just to be clear, this is actually a subsection of the data. So once we started working with it, the real data is like something like 28 million rows. It was just too much data for the sake of this task. It distracted from the point of what we were doing over here. I'm going to be working on a project where I actually show you guys how to work with big data, but I didn't want to include it in this video. Okay, so we're going to call this review count, and then we're going to add that over here. So we're almost there. It should not be review ID. It should be Steam ID is what we're looking for. So you'll see that these numbers don't make any sense over here. There we go. So 92% of our users only gave one review. 98% gave two. And 99.99 gave 10. So as you can see over here, the vast majority of reviewers only gave one review. And I'm thinking that we want to, let go, and not include them anyways. We don't want to give gift cards to people who only gave one review. But what we're doing over here is we're just proving out that concept to the stakeholder. And this is what you have to do as a data analyst. You can't just say things, you have to also prove them, sometimes with graphs. So even though that took me, a solid extra 5 to 10 minutes to put together, it was worth the time because now I can put together a nice graph to show the stakeholder that, because what's going to happen is they have to be able to talk to their bosses and say, okay, we've considered this, we didn't want to do it because of X, Y, Z reasons, and here are the graphs to prove it. So we're going to go ahead and put together a small Pareto chart. think we have the data we need for that. Now I just have to go down here and replace all these OHWs. Basically refer to the right text, or the right data frame. Review ID count. This just needs to be Steam ID. And then index is a problem. This needs to be review ID. And this code is available in the description below as well. Pareto chart data. There we go. Sweet. And as you can see, we've created a Pareto chart over here. And it goes, as you can see, 92% is just this one bar, like just people who've done one review. This is what a Pareto chart does. Basically, you have two axes that kind of go in opposite directions. The Y1 axis, the Y-axis on the left, basically goes in descending order of number of values, and the Y right axis goes in ascending order, showing how everything adds up to 100%. This is a great way with data that's more varied of showing how much or little of a phenomenon is caused by a certain section of the population. So what I would say over here is I will create a small little block over here to actually verbalize what I want to say. Writing it out in prose, I think, is always good. You want to write it out in text, whatever you're going to explain. One, because it helps get your thoughts out there, and two, because you can read it out to yourself later and ask yourself, wait, does this actually make any sense? And you can ask yourself questions that your stakeholder will ask of you to make sure that you've covered all your bases. So I'm going to say something along the lines of, it looks, or I can't say it looks like, I need to make an assertion, like they say in English class, right? You don't share an opinion, you make an assertion. So over 92% of reviewers have only reviewed a single game. We probably won't be giving gift cards to people have only written one review, even if it was a stellar one. Let's limit data to people who have written more reviews. Okay, cool. So we have a little prose over there that we can insert somewhere later. And I'm going to be using DeepNote to create our dashboard today. Normally I would use something like Streamlit or Tableau, but in order to get things out quickly, we're just going to use DeepNote and quickly show the stakeholder how their data looks. So I want to create two new variables over here because I want to limit our data, and I want to create the two variables are going to be the number of games reviewed and the number of votes helpful. So here's an interesting, so actually here's what we'll do. We'll create a new table, we'll create a new list, right? We'll call it top reviewers, and we'll say that equals anyone from here, the list that we have here, so we want the Steam IDs, where, and I have two criteria I need to meet. So we're going to be using a array slicing in order to cut our data frame in size. Is this slicing? I don't think, actually, this may not be slicing. No, masking. My bad. This is masking. So we want to bring people in who have votes helpful greater than or equal to, let's go with 100, and then people who have a number of reviews greater than or equal to, like, let's say 3. And that'll give us a list. Oh, and then let's go ahead and just bring in their Steam IDs, and then we'll bring in just the values of those Steam IDs. Okay, and here's our list of people who... Okay, yeah, like the list is not too that long. This looks like about 1,000, maybe 1,000 people. But now what happens is these are arbitrary numbers I've decided over here, right? And in my experience, stakeholders almost always want to play around with the numbers themselves. So I need to make these dynamic, basically the number of votes helpful and the number of review IDs. Because the stakeholders oftentimes have great business knowledge that even the data analysts don't always have. And this is why they have really good intuition as to what those numbers should be. And you always want to give them the option to play around with it, in my opinion. So we're going to use a really cool feature of DeepNote where we can create a slider, and we'll call this first one games reviewed, and then we'll set the minimum value. We want them to have reviewed at least one game. Everyone's reviewed at least one game. And then up to 22 games, I think that was the maximum we saw. And then step size of 1. And then we will create another one, and we will call this one votes helpful. Basically, how many people had votes that they considered helpful, or helpful votes on their thing. And then we will, let's see, how do we want to arrange this one? We want it to be, we would like to go from 0 to, let's say, like 4,300. I think that was the maximum that was there. And the step size will go up by, let's say, 50. There we go. All right, now these are now 2 variables. Whoops, zoom in a little bit. These are now 2 variables that we can use. So I can go ahead and replace this with votes helpful, and I can replace this over here with games reviewed. And then now it's dynamic. Whenever I change these and rerun it, so to give an extreme example, I could do this. You'll see it shrunk it down. No one has 4,200 or more plus 5 games reviewed, votes helpful. But then when I put it back to 650, you see we only have a couple of people over here. Now the stakeholder can play around with the tool and then see, okay, how many people, it sounds like a good number of people. Obviously, if I had more time, then I would actually probably algorithmically run through all the different combinations that we have and list out the most interesting ones. But because we're kind of short on time, remember, they said they wanted something on their desk by the end of the day today. We need to kind of go with a quick and dirty solution for now, and then hopefully put something together more thorough a little bit later. So let's go ahead and put in. So now we have that. Now we need to actually like limit the data to just include those people. So I'm going to take our full data frame, right, which was df_1 if you remember, and we'll say it equals. We're going to create a new one. Top reviewers data frame. And then we're going to say this equals df_1, df_1, Steam ID dot is in, and then we'll give this top reviewers. We'll give this top reviewers 1. So you'll see 99 rows based on these parameters that we've given over here. Nice. Okay, so obviously we'll have to make it less strict, but as you can see, we've drastically reduce the amount of data that we have right now, which is great. That's exactly what we needed to do. So now I want to do one quick analysis. That way I can show it to the stakeholder. Now that we've kind of we've limited our data, we've cleaned our data, we've done a basic Pareto analysis and gotten an idea of like what we're looking at. Now let's go ahead and limit the data. That way we can show them something at that they can present to like maybe their higher ups. So the way I see it, there are kind of two ways to analyze this data. We can either analyze the reviewers, so we can do a reviewer analysis, or we can do a review analysis, so an analysis of the review itself. And then if I wanted to do like a reviewer analysis, right, then two things I could do. Let's say I look at the number of games they played, and then I can also do play time per game reviewed. And then let's also do, so you can see we have the reviews over here, right? I kind of imagine that a longer review is more likely to be rated well than if someone just said like yes or like nothing at all, right? And because of that, I think the number of characters in a review is probably one measure of how well liked and helpful a review actually is. So character length of average review, and then average comments. There is this comments column over here that we can take a look at. Yeah, comment count. So I would assume a lot of comments is another way of determining if someone's review is helpful or not, presumably because it would spur some discussion. Although, you know, people also tend to just react to negative things a lot, so maybe it just would also show like people who have very inflammatory opinions. I mean, having an inflammatory opinion about a game is kind of, you know, and, well, I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, I guess you could. Some games can be quite political, I guess, right? So, all right, let's go ahead and put together our analyses for these this data. So let's go ahead and look at the top reviewers first of all. So let's go ahead and do something along the lines of, we'll take this data frame over here. And if we want to get the number of games and then plot that, right, per reviewer. So we'll do like a histogram of that. So I think I would just do a group by, and then we would group by Steam ID. So dot group by Steam ID, and then play number of games, right? So I think there is actually a number of games owned. Okay, so we'll just take the maximum value of that. So for every Steam ID, we now have the number of games that they own. Wow, people own 9,000 games? That's interesting, okay. And remember that this is a data frame of data we've already limited. So what happens is when the stakeholder goes and, you know, moves these around over here, they will already be limiting this data frame over here. Number of games owned. Okay, so then what we can do is we can go ahead and call this num games owned. Copy that. And then we can go ahead and do px, so plot the express, dot, and I think we want a histogram again of num games owned, and I want the histogram to be this column over here. Wow, okay, so it looks like 8, 3. Wait, so this, I feel like this isn't the correct way to write it. So, I'm trying to figure out what the problem over here is. See, because it says count 8. That number's way too low. Is it? Or I guess, how big is this data frame? Oh, I guess there's only 12 records. Oh, okay, so let's go ahead and maybe reduce this to 3. And then maybe put that at 400. 399 rows, and then let's try this again. 91 rows. Okay, so now we have 91 people we're looking at. Okay, so it looks like, wow, yeah, people own upwards of 1,000 games, and then let's say I want to change the steps a little bit. So let's go ahead and go to plot the express histogram. And then see if we can increase the number of steps, or the bins. N bins. Okay, so that's the... So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 maybe? Let's see if we can increase this to 50 bins. Okay, that's a little bit better. So 0 to 500 games, but it looks like a decent number of people own over 1,000 games. And then let's go ahead and see if we can add a template over here. Oh, you know what? I think it's called Simple White, not Simply White. Okay, yes, this is easier to read. Okay, cool. So we have one graph to look at. Let's see if we can go ahead and add a little bit of a title to it as well. And we'll call this title equals number of games owned by top reviewers. There we go. That way they know exactly what they're looking at. And so that's one graph that we wanted to create. Let's go ahead and see if we can get playtime per game reviewed as well. So I'm going to copy this. And let's see, we're going to group by this team ID and then playtime per game, right? So we want to take, I think we want to take the maximum of both the number of games owned and the playtime forever. That way it'll get their most recent review if they've reviewed multiple games. So I think we can just do it this way. There we go. And we have that for each of our reviews. And then let's go ahead and create a new column or a new data frame. We'll call this playtime per game. And then we'll create a new column. We'll call it playtime per game. And then it'll be playtime per game, number of games owned. Divided by playtime forever. Yeah, per game. So number of games owned divided by playtime forever. Yeah. Or wait. No, it should be playtime forever divided by number of games owned. So we should create a new column that we can then graph. Cool. So we have playtime per game. Yeah, so this person over here, okay, so the 22,000 hours is kind of what I expected a little bit more of. But I have heard of a lot of people apparently on Steam will like buy a ton of games without actually like, playing all of them extensively. So let's go ahead and histogram this out. So we're going to do px.histogram. And then we're going to take this data frame over here. We're going to take playtime forever. I'm going to plot that out. Nice, nice. And we're going to do a template equals simple white, not simply white. And then we're going to create a title and we're going to do it. We're going to say this equals play time per game top reviewers. Sweet, 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 sweet. So we have a couple of graphs right now. Let's just do 2 more. That way we can get this to our stakeholder as soon as possible. So character length of the average review and average comment. So what I would want to do for that is I would want to create a new column. So we're going to go ahead and let's go over here. Top reviewers data frame. And we want to take the review column and we want to create a new column. So we're going to create a new one called review length. And then we're going to say that equals the review. And then we want to do a string method. So this is a way you can do, like, if a column is full of a bunch of strings, you can do like attached methods you would use on strings in Python normally to those columns. So we're going to do .str.length. Top reviewers data frame. And that should add a column to the end. Yes, it did. And then I think we can just build a histogram on that. So let's do a px dot histogram on top reviewers data frame. Whoops, getting these dialogues all over the place. And then x equals review length. I love this copy column name to clipboard feature, it's so useful. And then let's do our standard simple white template. And let's see, we'll create the title, and that'll be length of review, top reviewers. All right, there we go. There we go. Length of review, top reviewers. Now let's go ahead and do the last thing we wanted to do, which was average comments. And you'll see over here, by just doing a basic outline of the analyses that I wanted to do, I'm probably saving a lot of, or I'm making it a lot easier for myself. And it's something that I think certainly not everyone does enough of, where you want to really beforehand set the kinds of like analyses you want to do and plan stuff out prior to actually executing on it. And that's a really good skill to build up. That way you're not just doing things randomly. So now we just want to do one on total comments. I think that one should be fairly simple. I think I could actually probably just copy this Plotly Express thing over here. And you get the comment count. Length, number of comments. All right, there we go. So obviously 0 is probably going to be the number one thing. But then after that, it looks like the drop off is not too bad. So, okay, so we have a couple of charts over here. We have some information that we can show our stakeholder. Let's put together a small presentation for them and see if we can get them what they need as fast as possible. So I'm going to click on the Share and Publish button, open Publishing Editor, and then I personally like the article layout, although you can create a dashboard as well. And then what we're going to do is we're going to remove all this stuff. So I usually don't show stakeholders code unless they know how to code. And even if they do, it's usually not relevant. You want to show the stakeholders only what they need in order to make a decision. And that's kind of what your job is. I think the best analysts are really good at determining what people need to see and what they don't need to see. Basically what helps them make a decision and what doesn't. So for example, all this code, none of this is useful to most stakeholders. Even that chart's not particularly useful. Let's see, most reviews, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that. So we need this Pareto chart, right? But all this code is not useful, so let's just go ahead and hide the code. That way we only see the chart. We have our little commentary over there. We have these two little things over here that they can mess around with. And then even over here, we don't really need to bring this in. I think this is just a good overview of what we did. So we'll leave that in there. Over here, let's just go ahead and hide the code on these charts over here. All right. And you'll see I did not have to work that hard to get a output that is, oh wait. Let's add one more thing. So on top of that Pareto chart, let's go ahead and just add a quick title. So over here, we'll add a quick markdown block. Analysis of top reviewers. And then it makes sense, not in the context of our analysis, but in the context of the presentation, to actually have this block be above. Okay, moving this, you know what, let me zoom out of it. So I zoomed in, that way it was easier for you guys to see stuff. So let's see. Is it that hard to move this? Okay, let's just get rid of this then. We'll just insert it up here manually. I'll put it, there we go. So there we have analysis of top reviewers. We don't need this anymore. We'll add a quick thing over here. Let's see, change the below. Let's see, we'll say change the below sliders to look at different cohorts. And then I can go ahead and add that in there. And then let's go ahead and add one more thing, that just so they know how big the cohort actually is, we'll create a variable called cohort size. And that's just going to equal the length of top reviewers. So I'll actually need to delete this, and I'll need to put it down here. And you'll see it's fairly easy to add these little changes over here, right? So print length of top reviewers. There we go, and we'll just hide the code. And we'll print out cohort size. There we go, and we'll just hide the code. So whenever they change it, or they can change it in a second, then they'll see what happened. Okay, so I think we're ready to go. Let's zoom out one. Oh, so this is what it looks like at 100%. Oh yeah. So as you guys can see, I zoomed in a lot for the sake of the video, but let's go ahead and publish. And then we have something we can share to our stakeholders. There we go. And then if I go ahead and change this over here, so it'll actually be quite slow because what it's doing is it's running the entire notebook all at once. So I think if I was actually going to present this to a stakeholder, what I would do is I would extract only the data that we needed, put that into a different notebook, and then from there, go ahead and just copy and paste my code. That way I could create this quite easily. So it'll take a second over here, but it'll eventually run, and then all these graphs and everything will update for the new cohorts that we have. So you'll see the cohort size is 91. Actually, I probably should have reduced the most helpful thing. That way we were playing around with more data. As you can see, the app is doing some heavy lifting right now. So we've done no optimization for it right now. What I would do at this point, if I was going to present this to an actual stakeholder, is I would take a step back, probably go get some lunch or something. Basically go away from my computer for like 30 minutes, go take a walk outside or something, and then come back and look at it with a fresh set of eyes and be like, okay, does what I did make sense? I think that's also a very important part. Oh yeah, so you'll see the cohort size change to 63. So I think that's also that's one very important part about being an effective data analyst, is knowing to take a step back, clear your head, come back, and then mess around with the data. But that's what we have for you guys so far. Let me know if you guys want to see a video where I actually present this to a stakeholder, and hopefully this gave you a good idea of like what a day in the life of a data analyst kind of actually looks like. This is what we do on a daily basis. So thank you guys, and I hope you have a great day.